Good afternoon, welcome to Woodcraft Spokane. Today we're going to talk about the Sawstop. My name's Steve, I'm one of the sales associates here today, and as normal, our cameraman behind the scenes guy is Joel. Say hello, Joel.
They can't hear me.
They can't hear Joel, but he's here, promise me. Or I promise you. So let's talk about the Sawstop. This saw, besides the safest saw out there, is a quality saw. I've had one in my cabinet shop, going on 7-8 years now. We sell an amazing amount of these things. I can't tell you how many we've put into various businesses around here, school districts and that. Where I have a professional cabinet shop where I make my living there, I can't afford the downtime, so I needed a saw that I knew was going to do what I needed it to do. And on top of that, we're going to talk to you about the safety features. So let's get started with Sawstop. One of the things that we're going to do is talk to you about what happens when you come in and you buy your brand new Sawstop. When I bought mine, I bought the professional model. At that time, the only thing available was either the professional or the industrial. Now they've added 2 more saws to the lineup in a job site and contractor saw. We have all 4 saws here on display. We have pricing for all saws. So if you have questions on that, there's accessories that you can trick your saw out. We're able to walk you through the maze of things you can do to upgrade these saws. So the saw that we're looking at in the classroom today doesn't have a lot of hours on it because we haven't been able to start classes yet. So we're all excited to get back in here. The thing that impressed me the day that my Sawstop got delivered was the quality of the packaging, how things were organized. All your nuts and bolts are on cardboard trays that match certain parts of the saw that you're putting together. And it came with a real owner's manual. Not only did I get this, but I got a laminated quick reference sheet. And that helped a lot as I was setting my saw up. But as far as owner's manuals go, I don't think I bought another power tool, and I have a whole shop full of them that is as comprehensive as what Sawstop's done for us today. So obviously this saw can be configured a couple different ways power-wise. That's probably one of the questions that Joel and I get asked the most. Will it run on 110? Will it run on 220? I took my professional and converted it to 220. The industrials are going to come in at 220. So that depends on the saw that you're buying and the horsepower motor as far as being able to convert that to either 110 or 220. The other question we get asked on these saws is dust collection. I believe on any table saw it should be hooked up to a dust collector and not a shop vac. A shop vac's not designed to pull the volume that you need to pull away from these or your planers or your joiners or that. So it's got the standard 4-inch dust port, which starts you on your way into a dust collection system. And again, these are the things that we are able to help line up for you. So this saw here is basically the pretty straightforward model. Sawstop has now come out with one that has a router extension table over here to our right. So you're taking up the same footprint, same amount of space in your shop, but you have the ability to mount a router table over there. In my shop, what I did is I built my outfeed table that's straight back here, and it gives me the extra room I need as we're sliding sheet goods. And in this corner over here, I put a Craig clamping table. So as we're doing rails and stiles coming off the table saw, or I'm doing picture frames, I can actually go right to my clamping station for my Craig, do my pocket screwing, and it's set up that way. So one of the things that we're going to do here, because our motto is safety first, is I'm going to take a couple of the things off that are going to get in the way of us being able to do what we'd like to do today. So the first thing I'm going to take off is the riving knife. And actually, to get to the riving knife, I'm going to take off the zero clearance plate. Now, when you buy your Sawstop, it's going to come with a brake in it, a 10-inch blade, 5/8 arbor. You can take and put a dado stack in here, but you obviously need the dado brakes, or the dado blades. You need a different brake, and you need a separate zero clearance plate for it. This riving knife right here, real easy, and I know Joel can't get a good picture of this. There's a gray handle that I'm going to lift up, and that allows me to remove my riving knife that easily. What does a riving knife do on a table saw? A riving knife helps with the prevention of kickback. This is the gray handle that I'm talking about that raises and lowers, locks in your riving knife. In this particular case, I have the blade cranked all the way up because I'm going to do a blade change on this. I don't know if it's a surprise to everybody out there, but we've been authorized to do the hot dog test today. And what the hot dog test will do is we're going to show you what happens when a object such as your finger makes contact with this blade. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. So we have 2 wrenches that come with this, and they're going to allow me to do a blade change. I've already loosened this nut here. I'm taking it, removing it from the arbor. I have the backing plate for my blade, and then I'm going to slide my blade off here. The reason we're removing this blade is to show you the ease of changing a blade on this, but we're not going to use that good blade as our sacrificial blade for when we set the brake off on this thing. All right, so let's get to the brake cartridge itself. So the way that this works, and there's lots of different rumors on Sawstop. Here's the easiest explanation that I've been told, and this is my understanding of how this works. When this saw is in the on and running position, it has a small electrical charge that's running with that blade. It's happening, we don't even know it. Any disruption of that electrical charge will take the aluminum brake, and we're going to show you where that's at in the saw, and it will take this 10-inch blade 10 times faster than the airbag in your car deploys and jack this aluminum piece into the blade to stop the blade. And at the same time, what's called the trunnion, which is basically the guts, the transmission of this table saw, it drops the blade down and out of the way and brings this blade to a complete stop. So when you're coming in and you're looking at Sawstop and you're like, brake, how does the brake work? It is this electronic unit right here. Now, when I first bought my saw, if you had a brake that got set off, you could send it to Sawstop and they would send you out a free cartridge. I believe that that program is still going on because what they want to do is they want to diagnose this microprocessor in here and get information relative to how fast did it happen, what set it off. They're able to determine, was it a finger contact or was it a tape measure? Was it a nail in a piece of board? Was it that the wood was so wet that it interfered with, again, that small electrical charge that's continuing to run around the outside of that blade? So, Sawstop, my understanding of the gentleman that designed Sawstop was at the time that he came up with this technology, he took it to all the other manufacturers. And they all kind of declined him, telling him that what was the perceived $400 to $600 difference for a saw with this safety technology, they weren't interested in it because they said you and I as consumers wouldn't pay for it. So what he decided to do then was make his own saw. And that's how Sawstop came about. One of the other questions Joel and I get asked a lot in here lately is, I heard that Festool owns Sawstop, or I heard Sawstop owns Festool. They both are owned by the same parent company now. So there is a parent company that owns Festool and Sawstop. They don't own each other. They're owned by a mothership, so to speak. Hopefully they're sharing the technology in that. There's been rumors for a long time about Sawstop coming up with different things like chop saws with the brake technology on them, band saws, those kind of things. I believe in the email that John sent out on this demo, he said that every 9 minutes there's a table saw injury in the United States. When I was teaching the safety class in here years ago, and a little bit more background, I was a paramedic for years. The average amputation in the emergency room at that time was about $10,000 to $12,000 for a single-digit amputation. Way less than what a saw is going to cost, and you get to keep your finger. So let's get back onto this brake a little bit, Joel. I don't know if you're going to be able to see, but I'd like to be able to change this brake out. So when would you change your brake out? You change it out when you're going to a dado. You also change it out, in our case, because we're going to use what's called a demo brake. Sawstop, so that we can do these demos to show how it works, sends us out a demo brake cartridge. The demo brake cartridge, the difference between it and a regular cartridge is once we activate it, it's only good for about 1 minute. So we'll put it in when we're ready to cut the hot dog. So to get at it, I don't know if you can see it, Joel, but there is going to be this little red rod right down in here. And that's what's holding my brake cartridge in. And this is new enough, Joel, that I found over time with mine, they kind of have to wear in a little bit, that rod does. All right, so there it is. There's the brake cartridge. That's a standard brake cartridge. Doesn't look any different than a demo cartridge, except this says demo on it. So this is what will come with your Sawstop. And again, if it's a dado, the only difference is that aluminum's going to be a little wider. It's going to go in the same way. It's going to act the same way in the saw. So what I do know is this saw will not turn on or function without a cartridge in it. So that is one of the features that I call it the light show. When you flip on your saw, it goes through a red and green light show. It's checking all its processors and stuff to make sure that it's ready to go and get up and running. So right now we've got this thing stripped down so that we're ready, and we're going to go ahead and put the demo cartridge in this thing. So on the demo cartridge and on any cartridge, you can see where this goes into another side of a electrical plug-in in there. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to find my pin, which is right there. I'm going to find that. I'm going to slide that over. I'm going to take my red thing, which is right here. I'm going to put it in, and I've put it down. That brake cartridge is now ready to go. Okay? So then, Joel, in this case, we're going to take our sacrificial blade, and we're going to put it on there. And Joel, there's a mechanism, and your owner's manual talks to you about it, that you have to have a certain space between the teeth of these blades in the flat of this aluminum. So they give you a space block so that you can set that. What I find though is if I'm running a 10-inch blade, which is what my saw takes, once I have it set up, I haven't had to move it around at all. So maybe an adjustment if you go to a 6-inch dado stack instead of an 8-inch dado stack, you would have to take and do some adjustment. They do give you the little gauge on that. So Joe, so far, is there any questions? No? Okay. So one of the other questions I think we get asked a lot in here was this particular situation here. And I believe Joel helped this customer this week. He comes in and says, wow, this is what I did. We'll get asked, is that blade ruined? Well, you definitely have to get a new brake because they're not reusable. Yes, I can get this brake off of this blade. Would I put it back on my saw and start cutting with it without having it checked out? I wouldn't. The reason being is the amount of inertia it takes to stop this blade when this brake is injected into it. I would want to take it to a company here in town that sharpens, ask them if the balance is okay on this. Did it bend it at all? And I'm guessing there's pretty likely that it's knocked off maybe a tooth or 2 teeth of carbide at the same time. I know that we've had guys come in here and say, oh gosh, I set my Sawstop off and I put my blade right back in there. I feel that it probably should get checked out professionally. So I know it's been probably 2 or 3 months ago, 2 months ago probably. You've heard me talk about using a hot dog today. I think if you dig deep enough on YouTube, the gentleman that designed this saw actually stuck his finger in there. Well, again, having my saw, I think it's been 7 or 8 years, something like that. I've never set it off till about 2 months ago. I was hurrying kind of the last cuts of the day, and I actually had a finger to blade contact. The saw did exactly what it was supposed to do. It stopped the blade, it dropped the trunnion out of the way, and folks, there's no scar here. The day that it happened, I didn't even have to put a Band-Aid on. I was able to take and get the blade and brake off of there, replace my brake, replace my blade, and be back to work within about a 20-minute period. Yes, it scared the bejeebies out of me, and it was a good safety reminder that this can happen to anybody at any time. But it did work. It saved me a trip to the emergency room and an amputated finger. So I'm going to go ahead and put my nut on there now. And we're going to get this thing ready to demo. And again, you've heard me say, on top of the safety features, this is a well-built saw. The fence system on them are what I call the old Biesmeyer style. It's been kind of the industry standards forever. I'm going to go ahead and flip this handle down, Joel. And the reason I'm going to do that is we're safety conscious here. But for Joel to get a better angle on the hot dog going through, we're going to leave that overhead guard and splitter off. So we're going to get that back down to about where it should be. But normally we would have our guard and splitter in place. So, any questions still, Joel? Are we doing okay out there? Question land? All right. Well, from the time that we activate this, again, we have about 1 minute. So, I'm going to start getting configured. So that I know we're cutting through the hot dog. And yes, this is your normal garden variety, everyday hot dog. Joel and I asked for German sausages or something, but we were denied. So we're going with the everyday hot dog. Now, we haven't showed you the light show over here, but when I lift this switch on, it's going to go ahead and work through the saw to make sure that everything's operating, the brake's in place, the gap is good between the brake and the blade. It's going to make sure this saw is ready to set. So I've set my brake height or blade height. Now I'm going to try to figure out how to get my finger in a comfortable position so that we can cut this. Remember, folks, this is 10 times faster than the airbag in your car deploys. With the naked eye, you're not going to see this happen. Joel is going to work on trying to get, maybe slow this down. If not, I think the version I saw on YouTube slows it down. It's going to be loud. It's going to make a noise. All right? So with that being said, I think we're ready. I'm going to go ahead and initiate my saw. I'm getting my red and green Christmas tree over here.
Does it ruin the saw if it goes off?
It does not, and we'll talk about how to reset it. Okay, so we're green for go. Joel, are you ready with your camera?
Yep.
So, again, I'm keeping my fingers back. And that's Sawstop. So let's talk about what it did to the hot dog. That right there is the mark of the hot dog. No more. You can see that there's no trickery to it. It cut through the wood. But that right there is the mark that it left on the hot dog. So imagine if that was your finger. So we know a hot dog sets it off. What other things will set it off? Any conduction with like a tape measure. I have a Jessam sliding table on mine, so if it were to hit the metal there, if it were to detect metal within the piece of wood I was cutting, if my wood is so wet that it changes the density of the wood so that it affects that electrical charge, those are all things that are going to affect whether or not that blade is going to set the brake off. One of the things Sawstop was smart enough to do, though, is they give you a bypass or an override. What that means is that I can come over here to the side of my saw, and there's a key. It looks like a little luggage key that actually goes into there, and they give me a mechanism to turn that key on and off so that I can actually bypass the brake mode. When would I want to do that? If I'm having questions on whether or not I'm cutting wet wood. That's when I'm going to go to the bypass mode. So you can see that it tripped my saw. It tells me red, stop. So I'm going to go ahead and shut my saw down. And Joel asked a really good question. Does it ruin the saw? No, it does not ruin the saw, and it does not ruin your day with an amputated finger. What it does do is cause you to have to put a brake on and a new blade, but way more affordable than a finger in a trip to the emergency room. So now, there is a little bit of work to do to get this brake and blade off so that it can be replaced. So you can see again, I removed the red rod that holds the brake into place. I'm going to come over and I'm going to go ahead and take this blade off. All right, so here's the work part of this. It's getting this brake and blade, which is now one solid unit, to work its way off the shaft and the arbor of the saw. Joel, would you be a buddy and grab me a flat blade screwdriver? This saw is so new that it's tight. There we go. I might have just helped us out, Joel, by using my wrench here to, again, try to get it in the same frame. And folks, you can see this isn't that easy. I'm struggling a little bit with getting that to release. Well, thank you, Joel. If I can get the cartridge free of the pins, it gives me a little bit more room to wiggle this off. There is nothing better, Joel, than being alive. Are we done? The key to this, again, is getting these to come off at the same time. So, Joel, this is going to take a little bit of work. We don't want to bore these people with this part of it. I've seen this happen in 10 minutes where it pops off. I've seen it come right off, and I've also seen it be like this today where it's a little bit stubborn. But that brake and blade will come off there. This saw will be up and running here shortly. So, we're on live right now. You're seeing the little bit of a struggle that's involved with trying to get this brake and blade off at the same time. Other than that, we put the new brake on, the new blade off, and we're back cutting. So before we sign off today, Joel, is there any questions, anything that we haven't covered on this Sawstop? So please come into us. And don't be afraid to come back and say, did Steve ever get that brake and blade off, or is that saw done? Because one of the things that has to happen is when we do get this off, you crank it all the way to the bottom, and that resets the trunnion so that you're able to go ahead and get your saw back up and running. So I'm going to work on this a little bit longer, get a little bigger hammer, whatever it takes, and get this thing back and running. So please come see us at Woodcraft. We're knowledgeable about this product. We'd love an opportunity to go over this saw with you in person. We appreciate your time today. Thank you. Joel, look. As promised, folks, this will come off. And now this saw will be up and operational at your Spokane Valley Woodcraft. Thank you.